Hello and welcome to today's episode of The Drawing Board. My name is David Franklin. I'm your host and thank you so much for tuning in today. If you're a regular watcher of the show, you may have seen a couple weeks ago I said thank you for all the increase in views and subscribers and likes and comments. And again, thank you so much. All you regulars are really making this possible and I'm humbled and very appreciative of all that and all that touchy-feely nonsense. But also, I've gotten a lot of comments, and one of those comments was suggesting that I talk about the Myers-Briggs personality test. And for some reason, I talk about this all the time with one of my friends who's a psych major, and we take the test all the time. And for some reason, it never occurred to me to do it on the show, even though it would make a great show topic. Never talked about it though. So the Myers-Briggs personality test is a way of sort of categorizing people into one of 16 different psychological categories and describing their likes, their needs, their desires, their strengths, and their weaknesses. And it's really useful for you to know what your strengths and weaknesses are, as well as employers to kind of see what type of person you might be, military or business, whether or not you're working for someone or whether you're trying to, see if a position in leadership is right for you or anything like that. It's important to be able to sort of know yourself. Know thyself is a Socrates quote, or maybe Plato. No, I'm going to go Socrates. But knowing yourself is very important to know exactly what your strengths and weaknesses are, what you like and what you don't like, so you can get in the right relationships, make the right moves, and be in the right sort of environment to be as effective as possible in your professions, in your relationships, and so on. So what the Myers-Briggs test does is it takes it gives you a letter in one of 4 categories denoting what your tendencies are. And so there's 4 different categories. One we're going to talk about today, but I'm going to talk about 3 very quickly. So we have extroversion versus introversion, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. We've gotten intuitive versus sensing, and intuitive versus sensing. Intuitives usually very future focused, and sensors are usually very sort of grounded, practical, in the now sort of people. Thinkers versus feelers. Thinkers are usually very logical. They're very justice-based and very let's tell the truth no matter what, no matter if we hurt anyone's feelings. And feelers are usually very tactful and they're tactful and they're mercy-based. And last we have judging versus perceiving, which is a lot of is your mind already made up or are you more flexible sort of things. And those are very, very simple and simplified, very not complex and fully defining descriptions of those, but I'll get to those in separate episodes later on. So today we're going to be talking about extroversion versus introversion. And if you watch the news or go on Facebook or Tumblr, which is probably full of introverts, I know that's not fair, but I think it's funny, and it's not completely true. But if you go into any of these places or you're in a socio-political environment, you've probably heard the terms extroversion and introversion thrown out. And there's a lot of misconceptions about extroversion versus introversion. The sort of assumption is that extroverts are all charismatic and super peppy and that they really inspire people and give up this great vibe. And yeah, there's some correlation there, which means it's not caused by your extroversion. But yeah, a lot of extroverts have those traits. And then there's the assumption that introverts are all people who are very shy and have social anxiety and want to go home and read a book and hang out with their cat rather than go to a party. And yeah, again, there might be a correlation there, just like there's a correlation with introverts and Tumblr, but I don't think it's a great way to define it because if any of your regular viewers of the show, you might know that I'm planning on writing a book. And I have 2 friends that really inspired me to write this book because they're such interesting psychological cases. For friend A, he's very charismatic and has a lot of social skill and loves talking, or you would think he loves talking. But according to this test, he is an introvert. And I have another friend who kind of is very shy and doesn't like going out of his comfort zone all that much, but by the definition that the Myers-Briggs test gives, he is an extrovert. So the true definition of extrovert versus introvert is that an extrovert gets energy from being around big groups of people, and an introvert gets energy from being alone. So after a long day at work, when you're tired, do you want to blow off steam by going to a party of 30 plus people, maybe drinking, maybe dancing in a big crowd where they may be total strangers, but all you want to do is just kind of get your energy out and really bounce off the energies of these other people? Or do you want to go home? Do you want to read a book and play a video game and not be around people for a little while? And so it really has to do with how you recharge your batteries. Do you recharge your battery by getting energy from other people or by being by yourself? And that has very little to do in its purest form with social skill, even though there's a lot of correlation between extroverts and social skill and introverts and social skill. But diving into that even further, really, in reality, when we're talking about social skill, there are different social skills that are associated with both. Again, there's no causation or anything, but there's an association with different social skills with introversion and extroversion. So, for example, extroverts, what we normally see as being socially skilled, are people who really sort of inspire people. If I'm an extrovert and I'm in a good mood and you're hanging out with me, you're probably going to end up being in a better mood by the end of the night. Whereas an introvert, their social skill usually isn't in being super peppy all the time. It's usually not in inspiring 50 people to take on their energy if they're happy or sad, that people follow them and flock to them like that, which is why we usually associate leadership with extroversion. But introverts, there's an association that introverts are usually a lot better on a one-on-one environment. Extroverts can usually gloss over in a one-on-one situation. They can gloss over how someone feels some way. They're not very good at they're not as good at being empathetic towards another human being, whereas introverts are usually pretty good at getting empathetic readings off of other people, knowing how they think a way, knowing why they feel a certain way, and really being able to relate to them. And those are different versions of leadership, but they both have their place in leadership. They both have their place in relationships and different things like that. Two extroverts and two introverts can do well in a relationship, like an intimate or platonic relationship. But generally speaking, especially when it comes to intimate relationships, one extrovert and one introvert is usually better. It's not necessarily saying that you can't get along any other way, but there's a certain correlation that if I like to talk and you like to listen, it's going to be less bad than both of us wanting to listen and both of us wanting to talk. So, again, there are different correlations and there's different combinations. So I have friend A who's very socially skilled, very charismatic, but he likes to write music and play video games and play Skyrim and read Wikipedia, like the Star Wars site. And then I've got the other friend who is a swing dancer and plays Magic the Gathering, which would require him to go out, but he likes staying in these very specific, like, I know these people, I know what to do, sort of situations. And when we went to work for Disney a year ago, he sort of backed off. We were trying to meet new people. He's like, I need you to go over there first because I can't break the ice. I can't do that. I'm too shy. And it's interesting to see those sort of dynamics, that someone who's an extrovert is shy and an introvert is not shy at all, even though they feel drained by being around. So being around a lot of people and being in those social situations. So it's a lot more complex than you'd think. It's more complex for me and for my family. For instance, my father is what you call an ambivert, like someone who's ambidextrous, who can use both hands. An ambivert is someone who is somewhere in the middle of being an extrovert or an introvert. When you take the Myers-Briggs test, you're going to be scored, here's the middle, you're going to be scored on being 100% introverted or 100% extroverted or anywhere in between. I personally score right about an 80% extrovert, and as an 80% extrovert, whereas my father would score somewhere in the middle. If you're within 10% on either side, you are considered to have a moderate to weak preference or no preference at all for being extroverted or introverted, which makes you an ambivert. And ambiverts, they don't want to be in huge groups of people, but they don't want to be alone. They probably want to relax by being at home, playing a board game or watching TV with 3 to 4 people. And that's an ambivert quality. And then you have people like myself who also break the rule. Yeah, I score an 80% extroversion because the Myers-Briggs test asks you questions like, do you like going to parties? Do you like being in big groups? Do you think a party is more interesting than a good book or game? And I might say yes to a lot of those questions, but also I sort of have a certain amount of energy that I have. By the strictest of definitions, I get energy both from being alone and from being in big groups. And I prefer to balance them almost perfectly right down the middle. So if I've been alone a whole lot, I really want to go out to a party, and that's really all I want to do. But if I've worked a 10-hour shift, I don't want to be around people. I don't really want to go to a party. And if I do go to a party, I'm going to hug the wall. By the way, that's an introverted trait. Introverts usually sit with their back to a wall and kind of cover up like this. They hang out a little bit by themselves, whereas extroverts will usually gravitate towards the middle of a room where they're around the most people. And if I've had a long day, if I do go to a party, I'm going to be by myself, or I'll just stay home altogether. And it's interesting because while this test is really great at putting you into 16 initial categories, there are a lot more fine details that really make you different than these 16 little categories. And you can be different than those categories. And it doesn't put you in a box. It just helps you kind of get started on the process to knowing yourself. So anyways, new background here. If you like this background, I'll probably be trying out some new ones over the next couple weeks, but let me know. I'm trying to find a place in my house to film. And if you like this video, I'll be doing one on intuition versus sensing, thinking versus feeling, judging versus perceiving. I could go in even further and do a lot of different topics. So if you are interested in this sort of thing, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll keep going on it. Otherwise, I might go back to some mental disorders or some evolutionary biology, which will be in the distance anyways, but this was suggested and I thought it was a great idea. So let me know what you think, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.